The chandelier swayed above us like it knew the storm was coming. I felt the sharp sting across my cheek before my brain could even process it. My sister's eyes were blazing, fire and entitlement in equal measure. "Give me the keys to your penthouse," she demanded, voice loud enough to hush the 280 people milling around the ballroom. I blinked, stunned. The slap burned, my pride shattered, but my voice stayed firm. "No," I said, each syllable deliberate. She raised her hand again, and for a split second I thought she might strike me again. But I turned on my heel, leaving shocked whispers trailing behind me. I could feel every pair of eyes piercing my back, judging, questioning. I didn't care. Not now. I stepped out into the crisp night air and pulled my phone from my clutch. One call. That's all it took. 30 minutes later, the sound of the doorbell echoed through my penthouse lobby. A man stood there, perfectly composed, but his eyes betrayed the gravity of what was coming. He handed me an envelope. I opened it. The contents made me exhale a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Back at the wedding, my sister's facade crumbled. Tears streamed down her face, but not from remorse. Betrayal she hadn't expected. I watched from the shadows as she realized the cost of her ambition, and suddenly the entire world of family and privilege she'd clung to felt hollow. "My name is Jessica Monroe. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever been treated like a stranger in your own family? Like the people who were supposed to love you the most had already picked sides, and you weren't invited to the table?" I lit a cigarette in the dark, inhaling the bitter smoke as the city lights of Manhattan shimmered below. Every lie she had told, every betrayal she had sown, now hung in the air like storm clouds ready to burst. Me. I was no longer afraid. I was awake. I thought about her, laughing in front of everyone, thinking she had me cornered. But she didn't know the depths I could reach. She didn't know the fire she'd awakened in me. And as the wind cut across my face, I made a silent promise. She was going to regret ever crossing me. The night wrapped around the city like a velvet cloak, hiding secrets that only I would unveil. And in that silence, one truth: the morning after her slap, my penthouse felt like a fortress. Every corner whispered power and control I hadn't let myself feel before. I poured a glass of wine, letting the ruby liquid warm my hands as I replayed last night's chaos in slow motion. Her betrayal wasn't just physical. It was every sneer, every manipulative smile, every word that dripped with entitlement. She had always thought she could take what she wanted. My life, my money, my space. She underestimated me. Badly. The man I'd called wasn't just any man. He was a professional. Quiet, precise, lethal in the most elegant way. He handed me the files, her secrets, her debts, her hidden accounts. Evidence meticulously compiled, every transaction, every lie, every favor she had twisted for herself. I walked through the apartment, papers clutched like weapons. This wasn't about revenge yet. Not fully. It was about understanding the battlefield. Knowing the enemy. And my sister? She had no idea that the battlefield had shifted. By noon, I was back at her apartment under the guise of civility. She opened the door, makeup smeared, hair falling in chaotic strands, eyes wide with disbelief. "Jessica, what are you doing here?" Her voice cracked, the arrogance faltering. I smiled, cold, controlled. "I'm just checking in. Making sure everything's fine." Her laugh sounded hollow. "You're what? Threatening me?" "No," I said softly. "I'm showing up. The difference is subtle but powerful." I left her standing there, confusion tangled with fear, and stepped back into the city streets, where no one could see the fire in my eyes. "My name is Jessica Monroe. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever realized that the people closest to you are the ones most capable of cutting you open? Not physically but mentally, spiritually, leaving you raw, exposed, questioning everything you thought was safe?" By sunset, I had a plan forming, threads connecting in ways only I could see. She thought she'd humiliated me in front of hundreds, but humiliation is a tool in the wrong hands. In the right hands, it becomes leverage. That night, Manhattan glittered beneath me, oblivious to the quiet storm building above its streets. And I understood something critical. Revenge doesn't have to be loud to be devastating. It only has to be precise. Some people think betrayal is a wound. They're wrong. Betrayal is a weapon. And I was just beginning to sharpen mine. The last light faded, but my resolve burned brighter than ever. By the third day, her world was already trembling. I watched from the edges, careful, patient, invisible. People she trusted began to slip, phone calls unanswered, her so-called friends hesitant, whispering behind her back. The first cracks were subtle, but I saw them widen with every passing hour. I received another envelope at my penthouse that evening. This one contained a series of documents. Her company's financials, legal papers, contracts she had forged, and a list of people she owed favors to. People who wouldn't hesitate to abandon her if the right evidence reached them. Every piece was a puzzle I was assembling, but the picture was clear. She had built her empire on deceit, and I held the blueprint to its collapse. I called her once, just once, to test the waters. She answered, her voice sharp, brittle. "Jessica, what do you want?" I let silence stretch. Then quietly, "I'm just wondering, how long can someone run before the past catches up?" Her laugh was brittle, forced. "You think you can scare me?" "No," I said. "I'm just letting reality do its work." That night, I sent a single anonymous email to one of her biggest clients. A small hint of mismanagement, a question about transparency, enough to make them pause, doubt, and investigate. She had never been accountable before. Now even the smallest suspicion would rattle her. I watched her from the shadows the next day, mingling at a charity gala, makeup flawless, smiles rehearsed. But beneath the surface, the cracks were showing. The twitch of her hand, the hesitation in her laugh, the subtle flinch when someone mentioned a financial discrepancy. She was unraveling, and I wasn't even touching the edges yet. My name is Jessica Monroe. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever watched someone you loved, someone you thought was untouchable, begin to break without touching them, simply by revealing the truth they tried to bury? I felt no satisfaction yet. Patience is its own kind of cruelty. By dawn, I had mapped the next phase. Alliances she thought were solid, friends she believed loyal, favors she had counted on. They would all turn against her. The game was no longer hers. She had started the fight, and I was just learning how to win it. I poured myself a drink, the city lights outside reflecting like shards of glass. Each one reminded me of her face the night she slapped me. The arrogance, the entitlement. She thought she'd humiliated me in front of hundreds. But humiliation is temporary. Exposure is eternal. And by the time she realized what was happening, she would already be out of control. The storm was coming, and I was its quiet eye. The whispers started at brunch. The subtle glances, the hesitant handshakes, the forced smiles from people who once adored her. I watched through the lens of my phone as her carefully curated world began to wobble. The cracks weren't just showing, they were widening into gaping chasms. She arrived late to a high-profile business meeting, hair perfect, outfit impeccable, but her confidence faltered the moment she entered the room. Emails I had sent quietly to her partners had sown seeds of doubt. Questions about missing funds, unexplained contracts, discrepancies in accounts, tiny sparks igniting a fire she couldn't control. Her assistant, who had always been loyal, avoided eye contact. Her closest friend at the firm whispered something in a corner and then glanced in my sister's direction with a look of betrayal. And just like that, her safety net was fraying. I didn't intervene. I didn't have to. Every move I had orchestrated from the shadows was now unraveling her life with precision. She was like a puppet, unaware that the strings had been cut long ago. Later that night, I received a text from her. "Jessica, what are you doing? Stop this." I smiled, knowing that fear had finally found its way into her chest. "I'm not doing anything," I replied. "You're just seeing the truth." At her penthouse, the reflection in the mirror betrayed her. Makeup smeared from nerves, lips pressed tight with anxiety, eyes wide and searching for someone, anyone who could reassure her that she wasn't alone. But no one came. Everyone who mattered had already started drifting away. The empire she had built with lies, manipulation, and charm was crumbling beneath her own feet. My name is Jessica Monroe. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever watched someone you loved panic knowing they've lost control and realized that the only reason it's happening is because you refuse to play by their rules? By midnight, I had a plan forming for the next phase. Legal exposure, public embarrassment, and private reckonings. Every angle accounted for. And yet, I felt a strange mix of sadness and exhilaration. She was my sister, but she had forced my hand. Every betrayal, every selfish act, every slap across my face demanded this response. I poured a glass of wine, staring at the city skyline from my penthouse. Manhattan glittered, indifferent, while I prepared to pull the threads of her world apart. She had thought she controlled everything, everyone. He was wrong. And when the pieces finally fell, she would realize that the strongest revenge isn't anger. It's inevitability. The night was still, but beneath it, chaos was brewing. And I was its conductor. The phone calls started at dawn. One by one, her contacts, investors, and colleagues questioned her integrity. Emails I'd sent under carefully masked aliases had triggered doubt and fear. Meetings were canceled, partnerships paused, and suddenly she wasn't the untouchable queen of Manhattan she had always believed herself to be. She stormed into her office, her heels clicking against the marble floor like gunshots. "Jessica," she demanded into the phone, voice trembling with rage and panic. "What is happening? Who's doing this to me?" I didn't answer. I wasn't in the office. I didn't need to be. Every move had been orchestrated meticulously, and now the dominoes were falling. I watched from a distance as she realized the walls she'd built around herself were nothing more than illusions. By noon, her first public confrontation hit. A major client called her out during a board meeting over missing funds and mismanaged accounts. Her carefully rehearsed charm failed. For the first time in her life, she stammered, floundered, and looked helpless. Whispers rose like a tide, sweeping through the room, carrying her reputation down with it. I received a photo of her later that evening. Tears streaming, mascara smudged, hands shaking as she fumbled through documents that once belonged to her pride. She had always believed power was untouchable. But power built on deceit is fragile. My name is Jessica Monroe. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever seen someone panic, clawing at the illusion of control, only to realize it was gone the moment they looked up? I smiled quietly, swirling wine in my glass, savoring the quiet justice. Not satisfaction, justice. There's a difference. Satisfaction is fleeting. Justice is inevitable. By midnight, she had lost half her key accounts, a trusted employee resigned, and her closest friends had begun to distance themselves. Her world was unraveling thread by thread, and yet she still thought she could fight back. She didn't realize she was trapped in a storm of her own making, one I had merely guided. Outside, Manhattan glittered in cold, indifferent brilliance. But inside her world, a fire raged. A fire she had lit herself, and one she couldn't extinguish. She had struck first. I had only answered with precision, patience, and inevitability. And in that quiet I understood the truth. Revenge isn't loud, isn't brash. Revenge is subtle, surgical, and unstoppable. The night whispered promises, and I was listening. By dawn, the city had already begun talking. Gossip spread like wildfire, her mistakes, her lies, her greed. Social media was ruthless, friends questioning, colleagues distancing. Every carefully constructed facade she had relied on was crumbling, and there was nothing left to hide behind. I watched from my penthouse as the chaos reached her doorstep. Her phone rang endlessly, clients, friends, family. Each call a reminder that she was alone, vulnerable, exposed. She had demanded my keys, my life, my control, but now the world was taking hers. Her husband, once her shield, began to waver. Conversations I had subtly provoked made him doubt her judgment. He wasn't cruel, just awake to the reality she had tried to bury. I saw the confrontation in a photograph later, her sitting at the kitchen table, hands pressed to her face as he stood across from her, voice low but firm, questioning every choice she had made. My name is Jessica Monroe. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever felt the weight of inevitability settle over someone? Felt it in the sharp drop of their chest, the trembling of their hands, the desperation in their eyes as they realize there's nowhere left to hide? By evening, I had ensured that every lie she had told professionally was now public. Leaked documents, carefully timed and corroborated through anonymous sources. Enough to make her reputation fracture irreparably. Board members called emergency meetings. Investors demanded explanations. And through it all she flailed, frantic and unprepared. But it wasn't just the business. Her personal betrayals, her manipulation, her selfishness, her cruelty, were coming home to roost. Friends who had once praised her now whispered behind her back, sharing stories of deceit and manipulation I had quietly encouraged them to recall. Her social circle was evaporating, leaving only the stark truth she had always refused to see. She was alone. I poured a glass of wine and looked out over the city. Manhattan shimmered, indifferent, yet beneath it, chaos unfolded like a perfectly orchestrated symphony. Every move I had made was precise, measured, deliberate. And in her despair I saw the reflection of what justice looked like. Tonight she would realize the cost of her actions. The people she had hurt, the trust she had broken, the betrayal she had committed, all converged, unstoppable, unrelenting. And I would remain calm, steady, and unapologetically in control. The storm had reached its peak. Only the final act remained. By the seventh day, she was unraveling in every way imaginable. Her phone calls went unanswered, her emails ignored, and the carefully built image of perfection she had presented to the world was in ruins. Even her most loyal allies had turned away. Every step she took only emphasized her isolation. I watched her on social media, her posts frantic, defensive, and empty. Pictures of parties and smiles couldn't mask the tension in her eyes. Comments from colleagues and friends subtly hinted at the truth. Whispers of financial mismanagement and personal betrayals circulated faster than she could respond. She was no longer in control. My name is Jessica Monroe. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever seen someone stripped bare not by force but by their own actions, their own arrogance, until the world they depended on no longer recognizes them? She tried desperately to salvage relationships. Calls to family, frantic apologies, even tears in front of people who had once adored her. But no one believed her anymore. Every door she knocked on remained closed. Her empire, built on manipulation, lay in shards at her feet. And yet she kept reaching, grasping for control that had slipped through her fingers like sand. I didn't gloat. Not yet. There's power in restraint. I let her flounder, watched her struggle, knowing the culmination of weeks of precision would strike when she least expected it. That night she sat alone in her penthouse, staring at the skyline she had once dominated with confidence. The city lights reflected in her tear-filled eyes, mocking the illusion of grandeur she had cultivated. She realized the truth. People leave, allies betray, and power without integrity is fleeting. And somewhere in the shadows I observed, heart steady, breath calm, the satisfaction of inevitability washing over me. Every move she had made against me, every selfish act, had built this perfect storm of accountability. She had demanded my keys, struck me and humiliated me, but she had unknowingly handed me the tools for her own downfall. Her world had tilted and gravity was merciless. By the end of the night there was silence. Not the quiet of peace, but the suffocating stillness of someone who knows the reckoning has arrived. Her tears, her panic, her despair, all proof that justice, however silent or subtle, is unstoppable. The storm was not mine. It was hers. And she had brought it upon herself. The morning sunlight pierced through her penthouse windows, revealing the cracks she had tried so desperately to hide. Papers scattered across the floor, unread emails flashing on her phone, voicemails left unanswered. Her empire of lies had collapsed brick by brick. She sat at the edge of her sofa, head in her hands, her fingers trembling. The reality she had long ignored pressed down on her like a vice. Every friend who had once smiled at her, every business partner who had trusted her, every favor she had taken for granted, gone. All gone. I walked in quietly, no fanfare, no announcement. She looked up, startled, searching for confrontation, for anger, for the sister she thought would beg forgiveness. But I carried none of that. Only stillness and the quiet power of inevitability. My name is Jessica Monroe. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever realized that some battles aren't won with rage but with patience? That revenge isn't measured by noise, but by the silent collapse of what was taken for granted? I placed the envelope on the coffee table. Inside were all the details of her failures, the proofs of deceit she could no longer deny. Legal warnings, leaked contracts, testimonies, all documented, undeniable. She had no allies left, no safety net, no one to blame but herself. Her eyes filled with tears, wide and helpless as she finally understood. Not a slap, not a demand, not even my silence had broken her as completely as the truth she had tried to hide. She had built her life on arrogance, entitlement, and betrayal. And now she was left with only herself, staring into the void of everything she had lost. I didn't speak. Words weren't necessary. The silence between us carried all the weight. She had demanded my keys. She had struck me. She had humiliated me. And in the end, the cost of her choices was hers alone to bear. The city outside shimmered like it always did, oblivious to human pride and downfall, indifferent to personal vendettas. But inside that penthouse, justice had been served, quiet, precise, and absolute. I turned to leave, the envelope still on the table, a final reminder of her reckoning. Her sobs echoed behind me, a haunting symphony of the consequences she had ignored for too long. And as I stepped into the sunlight, calm, unshaken, I felt the weight lift from my shoulders. She had demanded a fight. She had chosen the battlefield. And now she had lost.